I wanted to share with you the travel art bag that I took on a trip to France. I was there for 14 days. 10 days was on a riverboat cruise, and then I stayed 4 more days in Paris just wandering the streets, and I loved it. And I wanted to show you what I carried. I carried this whole little bag. This had everything. I used this as my purse and art bag all in one. You can see that it's not that big. It was made by a lady online who's no longer making them, but you can see it's as big as my hand here. The side is pretty small, and then it's pretty wide, about as wide as my hand as well. And then I wanted handles on mine. She made some with longer, like you could strap it around your body, but I like to carry my purse and my art bag by handles. So these handles were great. They were long enough. They also could kind of wrap around if I needed them to. And let's dig in. When choosing your art bag, the one thing that I always judge it from is the size of the sketchbook that you want to carry. And if you can't find something like this, handmade, look at cosmetic bags. They come in all different sizes. You can find cloth ones, you can find plastic ones, you can find canvas ones. They're just a really great, inexpensive way to make an art bag. But again, take your journal with or your sketchbook that you're going to be using. That way you know what size you're looking for. I had a little set of sketchbooks handmade for me, and then I made the bag around that. So this is the size of my sketchbook. You can see it's not very big. Let's see. It's 5 by like 6.5 is the size. So 5 by 6.5. And it's just got little pages that you can put in and out with an elastic there. And that's exactly what I wanted. This was my first time on a trip and my first time sketching watercolor. We'll get back to this. I'll share what's in it. As I started thinking about what I wanted to carry, I knew that I wanted my camera, I knew that I wanted my phone, and I needed my wallet. So I carry this little bitty thing as my wallet. It houses my credit cards in there. It's got all my information. So that was in there. I took my phone. I wanted to have that with me. I also have my camera. It's just a little one. It's a Sony, let's see, what is this? XR100 IV, but it's perfect because you can see it's small, it's lightweight, and it does whatever I want it to do. I can get close, I can get far, and it's perfect for traveling. Of course, I had my sketchbook. At the time, I used a piece of t-shirt, like t-shirt material instead of paper towels. But now I've just used paper towels. I just fold them into thirds. So this is just the single sheet. And I like to fold mine into thirds. That way it stacks really nice. And usually these are just at the bottom of my bag. And then I have a bag full of stuff in here. So inside of the plastic bag, I have my watercolor set. It's got just 12 colors inside, but it's got mixing areas. I've got a couple tiny binder clips. This is all I needed to hold my journal pages open, and really I didn't even use them, except one day it was really windy, so I did end up using them, but it was nice to have them just in case I needed them. 2 water brushes. I like to use a round water brush whenever I'm out. So this just has the round point, and they're both the same size, and I just fill them up with water whenever I go out, and they last me a very long time. I've got a marker. This is a Faber-Castell Pitt marker, and I believe it's XS, so extra small, but in black. I've got a Stabilo All pencil. Let's see if you can see that. Stabilo All. This is a water-soluble pencil. I use this a lot in my sketchbook, and I'll show you some pages. So you can use this dry or wet if you're not familiar with it. You can just draw a line and then take a water brush and it activates it. Now you can also just dip the point into water and use it that way, and you get really nice marks. See how thick and thin it is? It's a lot of differences. You can also fill in an area, and then we're going to get that wet. Then I'm going to dip my brush in water. So I wanted to have the option of just doing black and white as well, and that's why I took the Stabilo All. So you can see here, that was where I got the line wet, and then this is where I dipped the pencil in. And then this was the color area there. Now the Stabilo All comes in, I think, brown, blue, and red if I'm not mistaken, but the black one is my favorite because I like the richness of it. Then I had pencils. I took a mechanical pencil and 0.3, 0.7, that's usually the one I like, is usually a heavier point, like a 0.7 or 0.9. And then I took a regular pencil that had an eraser. This was the eraser that I used if I wanted to erase something. It was just there for that, but I took extra leads too in case I needed them, and then just this pencil. And that was all I took. For me, I didn't want too many choices. I wanted to be able to sit down, draw, and then paint. That was my intention. When I went to France, my intention was to be an artist, not a tourist on location. And when you set your mindset into, I'm going to do art as much as I can, that's exactly what I did. Any chance I had, I was there to do art about my trip. I wasn't there to just sightsee and take a lot of pictures. I actually wanted to sit down, be in the hub of everything, and just sketch till my heart was really full. That's what I was going for. I also carried 2 plastic bags. I carried one for my paints. That way, if I was on location and say I had water here, or my paints were really wet, I didn't have to worry about them getting my bag all wet inside. So I made sure that I had 2 bags, one for my watercolor palette and then one for all of this. And if my brushes were really bad too, I stuck them in with the watercolor just so that everything wet would be in there. By taking so little supplies, I'm not like, what am I going to do? Am I going to use pastels? Am I going to use markers? Am I going to use chalks? Am I going to use crayons? This way I was on a mission. I wanted to use my pencil first and I wanted to paint. That was it. So let me share my sketchbook with you. Now, be kind. This was my first sketchbook ever and my first travel kit ever. And it was a learning curve for me, but I really enjoyed it. I filled 3 of these sketchbooks while I was there for my 14 days. Anytime I went anywhere, that bag came with me. And that's why I didn't have a purse and an art bag. I made it all one, so that no matter where I was going, I would just grab that bag and out the door I went. Plus, it's really cute. It's got art stuff all over it. To get over the blank page for myself, I took some really pale acrylics and I just watered them down, splashed some water on them and lifted some just to get some color on my page. And that helped me a lot. It helped me from thinking that it was something precious, and it was already, to me, it was already marked in, so I could just do watercolor right on top of that. So this is just something that I wanted to start with, that I am looking through a viewfinder. I wanted to find things that inspired me, that intrigued me, and what I found really beautiful in France, which is everything in my opinion. So here, when I was at Seignelay, I pulled out a drawer that just had green pastels, and the drawer number was 173, or else the color number, I'm not really sure. So you can see here, this acrylic part goes all the way across the page. That's that kind of greenish in the background. And then this was during the Arc de Triomphe. I sat around the Arc de Triomphe for probably about 4 hours, just taking my time, looking at all of the statuary there and picking what I wanted to see and what I wanted to remember. And this was done with the Stabilo All. I'm going to bring you up close so you can see the difference. I just drew it and used it like a pencil, where others I actually painted, where I put some heavy lines down and then dipped my and then used my water brush to smooth it out. So you can see the beautiful lines that Stabilo all does, and it's just so lovely having that one little tool, but yet it's so different than watercolors, and I really love that. So this was one of the sides. I think I've got several in here. We went to a winery that stored their wine in cast, and this was a really cool brass spigot that was in the cast, but I just really liked the barrel shapes, and I loved this because of the bronze. So I had fun trying to mix bronze colors and trying to think about color mixing. You know, I was fairly new. This was my first watercolor palette ever, and I think I used it twice before I went to France. So learning about colors and mixing them was something new to me, but I really enjoyed it. It was like a puzzle to me. How could I get that color? What can I mix? How can I dull it down? How can I brighten it? That's kind of the things that I ask myself whenever I'm drawing or painting. In one of the ports, we stopped at a harbor, which I loved it. We sat and ate lunch here, and we just got to view the boats sitting there swaying with the water, and it was just really a great atmosphere. I can still hear there was a little band playing. It was just a little breezy. The smell of French fries and lunch was all over the place, and the chatter was so nice. It was just a lovely environment. And by looking at just the simple picture, I am transported there instantly. It is amazing what your art, when you are out in the field, can do. The emotions, because you're not just painting, you're listening and you're seeing and you're feeling, right? You're feeling the breeze. You're hearing the dinghies on the boat, and you're hearing a little bit of rattle, and you're hearing the music, and you're hearing the talk of the tables next to you. Her ladies are enjoying lunch. It's all of that. So when I look at that, I remember that day so clearly. Now this was a thing that holds the shutters closed, so it actually pops up, and when you want to close the shutters, it lays back down so that the shutters can close. And I was enamored by them. I saw them, a couple different ones on the windows, and I just, anytime I saw them, I had to, of course, take a picture or draw it. This was when we were in Monet's garden. So I sat there, and they had a bench right by the house, and I just looked at what was around me, and I started drawing and penciling. You can see I've got really faint pencil lines in here. And then I just kind of filled them with color. A crowned fritillaria, one of my favorite flowers. I just really loved it. And these were some kind of bells. I don't remember what kind of flowers, but they were shockingly like that blue-green. It was amazing. But I love the composition, and I remember sitting with my friend on the bench. We sat there for half hour, and she was telling me different stories of her childhood, about her mom, and I really just loved being in that moment. And it transports me again, once again, to Monet's garden and the beauty that was there. This was where the harbor boat was. This was the scene looking across the way. So we were sitting on this side over here at the cafe, and all of this had boats towards the cafe area, but it was just really beautiful. And I love the kind of grungy tones. They were just such beautiful old buildings, and the light was amazing. This was another part in Seignelay where they had just a huge display of their pastels, but these were really chunky pastels. They had to be about that big, but the whole display above the pastel drawers was this big, colorful, chunky pastel in the widest array of colors you've ever seen. It was just so breathtaking that I had to capture it just like that. It doesn't look like much, but to me, it is definitely the pastels of Seignelay. This is my favorite piece from the trip. We got to see Van Gogh's last residence, and it was where he created 70 works in 70 days, which I was so inspired by that. When we walked up the stairs, he was staying above a bar. There was the smallest room, and all they had in there was a bed, a dresser, and a chair like this. And the chair was drenched in sunlight, and the wall was this kind of greenish blue. I don't know if it was at that time, but it was when we went and visited it. And I was just so inspired by looking at that lone chair and thinking 70 paintings in 70 days. It's also where he died. So it was very, I don't want to say cathartic, but maybe that is a good word for it. And it inspired me so much that when I came home from France, I made a class called 70 Days. And it was about Van Gogh's story and creating 70 pieces of art in 70 days. It was phenomenal. And the impact of this, we got to see a little bit movie about his life. All throughout the town, there were little pieces of Van Gogh, like whether he did the building, there was a picture of his painting, and then the building, all the little sites. It was just amazing. So this little chair, it looks so innocent, but it holds so many memories. This is the Opera House. I believe this is the Opera House as well. The Opera House has these huge lanterns outside, and they kind of morph into other shapes, and I was really struck by that. And I like the yellow because the yellow, of course, reminds me of lighting, and it was the perfect place for this. This was done with the Stabilo again, so you can just see the dark and light. Again, that is just using it dry in some areas and then using a water brush to make it darker in other areas. This is the Arc de Triomphe. It's funny, when I was sitting across the street and there was a couple, she was reading the guidebook to him about the Arc de Triomphe. So the benches were sitting back to back like that. I'm on this side, they are on this side, and I'm sitting here sketching. And she was talking about some of the facts, like the Tour de France goes around this building. It's 164 feet tall. So as she was reading some of the facts, I was writing them down. And then they looked over at what I was doing, and they were just like, that's amazing. And I said, what you were sharing was amazing too. It was like I had my own tour guide. It was really great. So once again, you see what doing this sketch, I just remember the conversation. They were a great couple. This is one, this was part of the Arc de Triomphe. There was a section that had a lady drawing, and I really like that. And this is Degas inside the Musée d'Orsay. And I love the little dancer here. Again, this was done with the Stabilo. The Eiffel Tower. Ugh. It's the love. I have been wanting to see the Eiffel Tower since I was in 8th grade. So every time I go, I've only been to France twice, but every time I go, I have to go visit it, and I have to go all the way up to the top. Yes, I've done that twice now, and the views are spectacular. So I wanted to I sat fairly close to the bottom so that I would have kind of this weird perspective where that went really tall up, but yet it seemed very wide here. And that was really fun. I just did it in one color so that I could capture it really quickly. This was Monet's Chrysanthemums at the Musée d'Orsay. Now, when I think of Monet, I really didn't think of a vase and flowers. I think of him more outdoors and that kind of artwork. When I saw this, though, I was really struck by the texture was beautiful. He had this really long, kind of wide texture or wide composition for this piece, and I just really liked it. I liked just kept capturing the flowers as much as I could while I stood there. And this is another piece at the Arc de Triomphe. It was just a side view that I found really interesting. It was all kinds of pieces sticking out and not knowing what they were, but I loved it just the same. Like, there is a angel up here blowing a horn. There is a guy here, don't know what he's doing, but you can see all of the details are there. Again, with the Stabilo all. This is the Musée d'Orsay window. They have the huge windows with the clocks, and a lot of people were there taking pictures, so we all just had to wait in line. And I actually had them take a picture with my camera, and then I had drawn the clock while waiting. And then once I got my camera back, I kind of looked at my picture and put myself in there. And I just think it's a beautiful page. This was at Rodin's garden, and if you've never been to Rodin's garden in France, you need to go. It's just amazing. It's all greenery, and you walk through this path that kind of curves here and there, but around every curve, there's something waiting for you. There's some kind of statue, there's a thinker, there's a wall with fountains, there's just so much beauty there, and it's fun to kind of discover because you never know what you're going to find. And to me, that was part of the journey. This was the big water part here. These were hedges that actually had the cutouts. They were huge. They had to be 12, 15 feet tall because these things right here are about 9 feet, maybe even 10 feet tall. It was amazing. And then there was a statue in the middle there. This is my favorite part here. This is the Notre Dame. And I love the rose windows of Notre Dame. I love them from the inside, but I love them even more from the outside because it's just so Gothic looking. And I tried to capture as much as I could. So I was trying to get the basic shapes, but my focus was this. I sat down by the Seine River and I just sketched. I was there for probably a good hour and a half, just sketching different things there. But this one is really important to me. Again, every time I go to France too, I have to go visit Notre Dame. This was Picasso in the Musée d'Orsay. I really liked his abstract work, and this was sculptural. This was a Larradi. This is macaroons. The windows were just amazing there. And I tried to capture the tower and a little bit of lace along the bottom of the platter. See how I captured that? And this is the rose window. This is from the front of the cathedral where they have the figures. And I just did this with the Stabilo all too. I didn't give the figures any details because I really couldn't see them. They were very high up, so I tried to concentrate on the darkness, and it kind of brought the figures to the foreground then. And then on the cruise, we had different kind of cheeses, and this is all the cheese that we had for the whole trip. And I had splashed some color on there that just looked like a ring of cheese, so I thought it was the perfect ending for my sketchbook. So you can see that I captured a lot in this little bitty book, even though it's tiny, and the pictures aren't real detail. But you know what? For my first time sketching and bringing a sketch travel kit with me, I was just so proud of myself that I did it. I wasn't just looking at the other artists there going, wow, I wish I would have done that. I actually took my art supplies and actually created in France. And to me, it really did make me appreciate it a little bit more. I felt more like I belonged there, like I was part of the environment and part of the city, part of its beauty, part of its history, by just sitting down and taking the time to sketch and create. And they're not masterpieces, but to me, they are masterpieces because it was my first time doing it, and it set me on my watercolor journey. And for that, I'm forever grateful. Who knew a little bitty travel kit like this would set me on my path? You just never know what that one little thing is going to do for you. And taking the time to make it happen is just something that most people don't do. They talk about it, but they never do. Here's my advice for you. Pack a travel bag today. Find something little that you can carry. You saw it's minimal supplies. Today, I would probably carry the same. I like having a pencil to draw with. I love the Stabilo all in case I don't want to do watercolors, but I also like just taking a small watercolor set with me. You don't need much. That's it. And you're ready to go. So happy exploring, be adventurous, and if you were inspired by today's video, please like, comment, or subscribe. It will really help my channel grow. Thank you for watching.